Hi, my name is Pete Vasilevskis, and I'm here today to talk to you about correlating some metrics taken on your web server with a load test in QA Wizard Pro to get some insight into what user tasks might stress your server. We'll start on the server computer. Start Performance Monitor on the server. You can find it under Administrative Tools in the Start menu. Once Performance Monitor is running, click the Add button to add a new counter for us to monitor. Under the Physical Disk category, select % disk time to add to our list of items to graph. You'll see in the graph that there's not a lot of activity going on the server. You want to make sure that no other users are accessing the server during the test so as not to alter the results. We'll switch to our client computer, which is the machine that we'll be running the load test from. Click on Record Load Test, and we'll record a load test against our sample shopping site. We'll call this one WYSIWYG Search, and test out some of the search functionality built into the website. We'll type in one term to search for, and scroll down to see that it shows up in the list of results. And we'll search for another specific term, and see that it also shows up in our list of results. Then we'll enter a more general term, to see that more results are returned. We'll click Stop to save this load test script. Click on Run Load Test, and we'll stress our web server using this script to simulate a set of virtual users all searching at the same time. Set the total number of virtual users in the load test to 100, and we'll scale the load test so that it doesn't reach the full number of virtual users until 15 seconds in. We'll run the load test for approximately 30 seconds. We'll select the one script that we recorded, and use that to run the load test. As the load test starts up, you can see virtual users being added. If we switch to the server computer, you can see in Performance Monitor the impact that the load test is having on the server. The red line, which represents % processor time, has peaked near 100% for much of the load test. The blue line, which represents % disk time, stays relatively near the bottom of the graph. On the client computer, we can see that the load test is finishing up. Back on the server, we can see that the performance has returned to idle after the load test has completed. We see that the search functionality in our web application seems to utilize the processor, but does not need extended access to the hard disk. On the client, the report generated by the load test shows us graphs for numbers of virtual users, response time, and the amount of traffic. If you find that your server only performs poorly with heavier load, it may be best to scale the virtual users up slowly, and then overlay the graphs from this report with the graphs from the performance monitor on the server to see when a particular problem triggers. We'll close this first report and script, and then click on Record Load Test to get another data point of load against our web server. We'll call this second script WYSIWYG Contact, and we'll record filling in a contact form on our sample shopping web application. We click the Contact Us link at the bottom of the page, fill in some sample information, and click Continue to send the contact request. We then click Stop to save our load test script. We click Run Load Test to run a test similar to the first one that we had run. Much of the information in the dialog remains the same, but we do need to remove the script that we ran the first time and add the one that we just recorded. Our startup time and the total amount of time for the load test remains the same, so we click Run to begin the second load test. On the server, we can see that the graph has begun to spike when the second load test began running. The load test is just finishing up on the client end. Back on the server, we can see that this graph looks different than the first one that we recorded. The blue line, representing disk activity, peaks near the beginning of the load test and remains high throughout the duration of the entire load test. The red line is the processor usage, which rises and falls, but isn't as much of a concern. On the client, in the report that's generated, we can see some pretty high response times to some of our web requests. Because we are tracking server activity with the Performance Monitor, we can guess that the high response times are caused by the heavy disk activity in the web application when a set of users are accessing the contact form. We can use this information to guide developers towards where performance gains can be made in the web application. Hopefully this has given you some insight in how to use QA Wizard Pro load testing with data from your web server to get a better idea on where performance problems may lie in your web application. For more information on QA Wizard Pro and load testing, visit www.cpine.com.